KTM finds itself in the enviable position of having created a popular brand within a brand with its Duke line of motorcycles. Don't believe me? Take a look at KTM's 2016 Duke lineup. Consisting of 6 different models, some of which, unfortunately, don't make it to the American side of the Atlantic. The Duke line starts with the 125 Duke and tops out with the 1290 Super Duke R, yet still has room for a pair of Dukes in the displacement range. That started the line in the form of the 609cc 620 Duke I. Before we go any further, we need to step back from the current KTM image to remember that, way back prior to 1994, KTM only manufactured dirt-focused motorcycles. The Duke was the company's first street bike, and the media center of the 2016 Duke line is filled with that first Duke's direct descendants, the 690 Duke and 690 Duke R. The Duke line shares the same basic equation that launched KTM on its trajectory from dirt specialists to including a range of street motorcycles, which has now become Europe's largest motorcycle manufacturer. The Duke started with an off-road chassis and put it in street trim that was able to capitalize on the strengths of the light, upright, quick-steering motorcycle. Not much has changed with the latest Duke, and yet, everything has. In performance-oriented, two-wheeled motorsports, the quest for more power and less weight is almost religion. However, the design goals for the LC4 extended beyond these to include broadening the power band, providing better rideability, meeting for Euro C emission standards, and, most importantly for a big thumper, minimizing the single cylinder's inherent vibration. When mounted in the chassis, the LC4 may only look a little different from the previous generation, but there are almost no parts shared between the two. Perhaps the most noticeable change to the LC4 is the top end, which, at first glance, appears to have changed from the SOHC to a DOHC arrangement. Yes, the new, silent timing chain is rotating the pair of sprockets, but only one is connected to a camshaft. This relocated camshaft has moved from its previously more central position back towards the intake side of the head. The front side of the head, where one would typically find the exhaust cam, has a secondary balance shaft that works in conjunction with the crank-driven balance shaft to quell vibrations. The single camshaft utilizes 3 lobes to actuate the valves, with the 2 outer lobes directly opening the intake valves while the center lobe controls a dual-fingered rocker arm to take care of the exhaust valves. Some clever engineering makes it possible to check and adjust the valve clearances without the time-consuming labor of removing the cam. Additionally, the chances of accidentally altering the valve timing by skipping the tooth in the timing chain while reinstalling the cam is eliminated. The intake cam lobes are in blue while the exhaust rocker's lobe is red. The exhaust valves are actuated by the 2 black fingers reaching below the secondary balance shaft. The head has an angled mounting surface for the cam cover rather than the typical flat one. This allows for weight savings by reducing the comparatively heavy aluminum alloy of the head and replacing it with the light, 2 mm thick magnesium cover. Just 3 bolts secure the cover, shaving additional grams. The top end isn't the only place where parts were changed to decrease vibration. The cylinder bore increased by 3 mm to 105 mm, while the stroke dropped 4.5 mm to 80 mm, maintaining the 693cc displacement. While the forged piston is larger, its weight didn't increase. When added to the new lightweight, more compact conrod, the result is a decrease in the oscillating mass of the piston/crankshaft assembly. Coupled with the friction reduction of the cranksplane bearings, These changes not only reduce vibration, but also help bump the power output while increasing the engine's reliability. In addition to the internal engine changes, the power delivery is massaged by the 50mm ride-by-wire throttle body and the resonator chamber attached to the intake tract, which helps tune the power pulses within the engine. When combined with the ride-by-wire throttle and dual spark plugs with separate ignition macks for each plug, the resulting power production a claimed 7% increase to 73 HP and a 6% gain in torque to 54 pounds-feet comes across the entire RPM range and has had its rev limit increased by 1000 RPM. All this doesn't come, according to KTM, at the expense of fuel economy or emissions. The 690 is now for Euros homologated. Although the previous generation 690 had RBW, it didn't take advantage of the electronic aids the technology makes available, ride modes and traction control. With the 2016 690 Duke, that issue has been addressed. The standard 690 received the street ride mode, while the optional €299 $317 track pack adds sport and rain modes. In rain mode, the power delivery is softened to account for the lessened traction of the road surface. Sport and street modes deliver the same peak power, but the throttle response in sport is more direct. KTM also adds the 2-channel Bosch 9M ABS system with an optional Supermoto mode that disables ABS for the rear brake only. TC is included with handling to the ride modes, while all 3 ride modes use TC to arrest rear wheel spin. Sport allows for more slippage before it intervenes. Working in a similar, but opposite, manner, motor slip regulation MSR prevents rear wheel skip or slide under sudden deceleration or abrupt downshifts by slightly increasing the engine speed. While this may seem to be unnecessary on a bike that includes, new for this model year, a slipper clutch, we expect a form of MSR to become the more common tool to limit wheel skip in the not-too-distant future. The Duke's instrument cluster has been replaced with a color TFT dash. Aside from the more modern look, the display has the flexibility to deliver different, situation-specific screens. For example, the bar graph tachometer is blue when the engine is cold and changes to black once it is close to operating temperature. At high RPM operation, both the gear indicator and the tachometer turn red, acting as a shift light. The screen also changes color based on light intensity. During the day, the background on the screen is a light gray with black digits. At night, the colors switch to white text over a dark gray background. In use on the road, all the important information, such as the RPM and speed, can be easily read regardless of the lighting conditions. However, in some daylight situations, sorting out the smaller text at the bottom of the screen can be a challenge. Even though the main tubular trellis frame remains unchanged, the chassis did receive some key upgrades aimed at refining the 690 Duke's signature sporty yet versatile handling. Duke cognoscenti may notice that the forged trickle clamp is new with an offset which has been decreased 4 mm to 28 mm. Increasing trail 7 mm to bring the figure to 4.8 inches. KTM states that the clamp stiffness has been tuned to match the 690's non-adjustable 43 mm inverted fork. A single WP shock supports the rear and is preload adjustable. The result is a suspension that is versatile enough to handle a wide variety of riding situations while retaining its characteristic sportiness. The brakes followed a similar path. The single, floating 320mm front disc has the pleasure of being clamped by a radially mounted, 4-piston Rambo caliper. The rear disc measures 240 mm with a floating single piston caliper providing the slowing force.